questions for you today to start off. First one is, how many, raise your hand, if you still like physical books, print media, if you still own one, if you still like it, if it's still hanging in there somewhere. Second question is a little rhetorical, but my question is, why do magazines survive print media? When everything else is turned digital, why are magazines still around? Why can we still find them? Newspapers, you don't see a newspaper anymore. We have ebooks now, news apps, but I can still find a magazine at a salon, a retail store, or even a bathroom. I'll find it somewhere. So I think the reason why magazines still stick around is because they are an experience. They are something that you can hold in your hands and just immerse yourself into, which is why I think convenience is sacrificed for immersion. And that story that it tells is what I would like to emulate today. So first of all, I want to preface that I did an interview magazine, which is a little bit different from other magazines. So I wanted you to take a look. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah. The themes create environment. So I want you to take a look at these two images. And the themes, two different themes, you look at them and they evoke different emotions. They make you feel different things. So I think that's really important to think about when you go into making a magazine. And here is interview-focused magazines, which are promoting the individual over the graphics. There are still graphics, but they're mainly color and pull quotes, and they emphasize the individual. They're not exaggerated text. So that moves on to my purpose. For this magazine, I wanted to interview my local community. I wanted to destigmatize drag performers, and I wanted to highlight my community. Right now, in this day and age, I feel like it's really hard for them, and I wanted to connect with their stories and their humanity and really highlight that. And that brings on to my purpose. I combined articles. I combined an educational article that touched on political science, I believe, and combined it with real, genuine stories to kind of converge into something that was well-rounded. So now getting into the process, the main technique that I used was a risograph effect. Basically, all it is I added a grain filter, I played around with the threshold, and then I used a color blending layer, I used a screen layer. I initially wanted to do an overprint effect for this project, but I felt like the risograph was grungier and the overprint effect was kind of complicated to view in InDesign. I know there is a way, but it was kind of hard to visualize how it would come out, and it would be CMYK. So I wanted to go grungier with a different color palette. So I opted for risograph effect instead. Next, moving on to printing. Now, I did not actually print this, but there are a couple different techniques that I researched on. First of all, digital print, which is the easiest, the cheapest, the fastest. Although you get fewer paper types, bad color matching, and it's just not durable. The second would be process color, which uses Ben-Day dots, and that's what's viewed here. You can use lots of colors if you want, but they are a little grainy and they can have bad color matching. Spot color is what I would use if I could, which is a printing process, just like a printing press, like process and spot are both printing presses compared to the digital. But I would use spot print because it has the best quality image. They use specialized plates to print large areas of color. They are expensive though, because you can only have 4 or 5 colors. You have to pay extra for every color. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't print it, because the best quality would have been a huge chunk out. Moving on to like a couple things that I learned, some tips and tricks throughout printing. Like printing on paper and making the color match is already a hard enough problem. Doing it digitally across programs is another big issue. So one of the first things I would suggest is setting your proof setup to either document or working. I would suggest working because that's for print and document is for screen. And then embedding your color profile. Anything that you place into the file might not have the same color profile. So I would assign your color profile and across all programs. Photoshop, InDesign is what I mainly used. I still could not get the colors to be exactly the same. After all this time working on it, had to do a few workarounds. And then next, obviously, you would probably know this one is transparency blend space. Use RGB, CMYK, color profiles. Make sure those are the same across your documents. And then lastly, when you format for PDF, that can change your colors again, which I would suggest using no color conversion or pick a destination space so that there's a lot of slices, so it's a little difficult. Moving on to what I've learned, maybe like problems and improvements. Looking at this, I don't quite I feel like the experience, the vision is a little broken. I think it's mainly my typography. I didn't realize that it was on the weaker end until I went back and looked at it. I still learned a lot. I just don't feel like it's an experience. I don't feel like it looks like a professional magazine. I still feel like I have a long way to go with that. Lastly, I would suggest everyone try making a magazine or even a zine. I feel like creating something that's tangible, something that is engaging, interactive. I think putting your emotions, or not emotions, but like putting a feeling into your work and trying to evoke that and trying to have someone read that and understand that emotion, that feeling, that experience, that project. I think that's really important, especially keeping print media alive. I know I didn't print this. I would love to, but I mean, magazines surpass digital anyways. I mean, there are digital magazines, but I can't name one off the top of my head. You know Vogue, you know all kinds of other magazines that are print media. I think it's also important to have an item that can be worn with love. Wear and tear is the humanistic design, and I see that in everyday life. I feel like we should remember that, emulate that more before we lose that part of experience, design. I think that's important. Lastly, I think even if you make something and it only ends up in your bathroom, someone else will be able to see it. They'll be able to engage in a new physical atmosphere that you handcrafted. And overall, I would just give it a try. Zines are really fun to make, they're really cheap, and I think that's all I have for